Maria Louise Kirk. Maria Louise Kirk, 21 June 1860 – 21 June 1938, usually credited as M. L. Kirk or Maria L. Kirk, was an American painter and illustrator of more than 50 books, most of them for children. Her notable work includes illustrations for a U.S. edition of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1904, for the first edition of The Secret Garden, and for several books by L.M. Montgomery and Johanna Spyri. Life and work. Born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Kirk studied art in Philadelphia at the School of Design for Women and then at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. She had exhibitions around Pennsylvania and won awards in Philadelphia and Chicago. In the 1890s, she went on to study at the Art Institute of Chicago and in 1894 won the Mary Smith Prize of the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts for a portrait. During her career, Kirk illustrated more than 50 books, including an American edition of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1904. Her style is individual, little influenced by the Jugendstil or Art Deco movements. Although she was a talented artist with so much published work, little is known about Kirk's life. In 2009, the Folio Society of London used Kirk's illustrations for its new edition of At the Back of the North Wind. Reception. A review of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland 1904 in the Advance magazine said of it, 57 illustrations by M. L. Kirk and John Tenniel will keep the small reader at fever heat. List of books illustrated. Kate Upson Clark, That Mary and the Story of a Country Summer, Boston, D. Lothrop Company, 1893. Theodora R. Jennis, Peokie and Her People, Boston, D. Lothrop Company, 1894. Pansy, Pansy's Sunday Book for Afternoon Readers, Gems of Literature and Art, with numerous illustrations, Boston, Lothrop Publishing Company, 1896. Louise Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1904. George MacDonald, At the Back of the North Wind, Philadelphia, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1904. Ouida, A Dog of Flanders, The Nuremberg Stove, and Other Stories, Philadelphia, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1909. George Dalton, The Helter-Skelters, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1909. Adele Haidwet, translated Norris J. O'Connor, Hansel and Gretel, a fairy opera adapted from the libretto, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1909. Jean Ingello, Mopsa the Fairy, Philadelphia, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1910. Favorite Rhymes of Mother Goose, New York, Couples and Leon, 1910. Winston Stokes, The Story of Hiawatha, adapted from Longfellow by Winston Stokes, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1910. Hans Christian Andersen, Tales from Hans Andersen, Philadelphia and London, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1911. Francis Hodgson Burnett, The Secret Garden, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1911. Fergus Hume, Chronicles of Fairyland, Philadelphia and London, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1911. Saratani Lefferts, ed. A Land of Play, Verses, Rhymes and Stories, Couples and Leon Company, 1911. All Shakespeare's Tales, Tales from Shakespeare by Charles and Mary Lamb, and Tales from Shakespeare by Winston Stokes, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1911. Inez N. McPhee, The Story of Idylls of the King, adapted from Tennyson by Inez N. McPhee with the original poem, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1912. Clayton Edwards, The Story of Evangeline, adapted from Longfellow, with the original poem, New York, The Hampton Publishing Company, 1913. Mrs. Molesworth, The Cuckoo Clock, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1914. F. J. Harvey Darton, The Story of the Canterbury Pilgrims Retold from Chaucer and Others, J. B. Lippincott and Company, 1914. George MacDonald, The The Princess and Curdie, 1914. Johanna Spyri, Heidi, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1915. Emma C. Dowd, Doodles the Sunshine Boy, Grosset and Dunlap, 1915. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Anne's House of Dreams, Toronto, McClelland, Goodchild and Stewart, 1917. Stella George Stern Perry, The Angel of Christmas, A Vision of Today, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1917. Charles Kingsley, The Water Babies, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1918. Miss Millock, The Adventures of a Brownie, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1918. Emma C. Dowd, Polly and the Princess, Boston, Houghton Mifflin, 1917. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Rainbow Valley, Toronto, McClelland and Stewart, 1919. New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1919. Robert Louis Stevenson, A Child's Garden of Verses, Philadelphia and London, J.B. Lippincott Company, 1919. Carlo Collodi, Pinocchio, The Story of a Puppet, Philadelphia and London, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1919. Johanna Spyri, Cornelli, Philadelphia and London, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1922. 1922. John Ruskin, The King of the Golden River and Dame Wiggins of Lee and Her Seven Wonderful Cats, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1921. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Real Love, Ingleside, Toronto, McClelland and Stewart, 1921. Johanna Spyri, Masley, A Story of the Swiss Valleys, New York, 1921. Johanna Spyri, Vinzi, A Story of the Swiss Alps, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1923. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Emily of New Moon, Toronto, McClelland and Stewart, 1923. New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1923. Johanna Spyri, Dora, Philadelphia and London, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1924. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Emily Climbs, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1925. Lucy Maud Montgomery, Emily's Quest, New York, Frederick A. Stokes Company, 1927. Johanna Spyri, Moni, The Goat Boy, Philadelphia, J.B. Lippincott and Company, 1927. A.C. Darby, Skip Cummaloo, New York. George MacDonald, At the Back of the North Wind, illustrated by Maria L. Kirk, London, Folio Society, 2009. Other works illustrated. Wide Awake, Volume 36, Issue 5, Boston, April 1893. Gallery,